Hello, beautiful souls. It has been a few months since I posted any new content on this channel. So I want to start by giving a warm hello to all of my new subscribers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so good to have you here. And of course, extending my deepest gratitude to my existing subscribers. I'm, as always, honored to have you a part of this channel, engaging with content about nervous system care and how to work in a way that creates more ease and vitality in our lives. I think this is such important material to ponder and consider and embody. To be honest, the past few months for me have brought up some of the most challenging moments of my life, and I will get into that a little bit in this video. And I debated as to whether or not I wanted to be public with this information. I like to keep much of my personal life private, just a preference for me. But after connecting deeply into my heart about it, I decided that sharing my story might in some way help someone else get through something similar. So long story short, without a ton of details, my partner and I went through a very sudden and extremely painful breakup a few months ago. We'd been together for over 5 years. It was a very deep relationship for me. And it was no doubt my first and only big heartbreak thus far in my life. It was like overnight, the person who had been by my side almost every day for 5 years was no longer there, and I was completely disoriented. I've talked a lot about building resource and resilience in the nervous system, and I have to be honest, there were plenty of moments during this time where I didn't feel connected to any of that resource in my own body. I had a hard time eating food, drinking water, falling asleep. I ended up losing a lot of weight in a short amount of time. I was completely devastated. So in this video, I want to share some ways that I got through this time of grief and loss, some ways that I took care of my body, my nervous system, my mind. There are many ways that heartbreak, breakups, loss, grief can show up in our lives, and it doesn't always look like a romantic partnership, the breaking up of one. It could be a friend breakup. Those can be extremely painful, or maybe the loss of a living situation. Maybe the actual physical death of a loved one, extremely painful and disorienting. So whatever the external life situation is that you find yourself in or have found yourself in, I want to touch more on the energy of heartache and grief and heaviness and loss. You know, for a while, I was a little bit embarrassed that I was so devastated in this way. I was with my partner for a little over 5 years, and I know many couples are with their partners for many more years, maybe even committed in a more entwined way of marriage, or maybe they have kids, or they're co-owners of a business, or they own a home together. But my friend reminded me that heartbreak is heartbreak, regardless of the specifics of it. So if you're listening to this and your heart has been broken now or sometime in the past, maybe you're finding this at a really raw moment in your own life, I promise you, you are in a sacred moment. It's not fun. It can be incredibly painful, but everything will be okay. This won't be for forever. And I hope that in sharing my story and the things that I leaned into will be able to help you in some way, if nothing else than to feel a connection with another human being who has also dealt with heartbreak and is in many ways still. So the first thing that I did was to let myself cry wherever and whenever I needed to. And during the first few weeks, I would often be out in public and tears would start to well up in my eyes, just unexpectedly. Maybe something would remind me of her, or like a memory would come up. Grief seems to come in waves, and part of how we let it move is by letting it flow through, by being with it. So if this happens in public, I think it's important to remember that you always have options. You could find a private space to let the emotions flow through in privacy, like maybe a bathroom or taking a moment in your car. Or you could also just let yourself be where you are at in your tears, letting the tears well up in your eyes and ordering your coffee from the barista. It's not the social norm, but I think letting ourselves be emotionally vulnerable, if we feel like we're able to out in public, will change the narrative that tears are not okay or tears are weird. This could be at a line at a coffee shop. It could be running errands. Maybe you're taking a stroll out in nature. This means that sometimes people may see you sad, strangers. And if that feels okay for you, it can be a really lovely moment of vulnerability. Honestly, most likely you'll never see these people again, and allowing them to see you in your misty humanness creates a super raw connection that may be touching for them and may touch them in ways that you can never even imagine. I would often cry in front of friends as I shared my feelings. Actually, yeah, often I would. But my friends know that I'm very in touch with my tears, and they held a safe space for me to just be me. I would cry every morning upon waking up. For weeks, the grief felt so heavy in my heart as I was disoriented from her not waking up next to me, opening my eyes. It took me a minute to adjust to what had happened. I would cry myself to sleep, missing her warm presence next to me as I drifted into the night. The point is I cried, and I felt into this heavy energy of grief, and I gave myself permission to be messy in it. Months later, I still cry from time to time, and I probably will for a while, but it does feel like a lot of the initial heaviness has moved through me. I think letting ourselves feel our emotions can be an incredibly powerful practice. We can let them be there without asking them to be different or to remove themselves. We just listen, we allow, we let ourselves be human. So imagine that a friend of yours calls you and is like, I'm having a really hard day. My heart's in a lot of pain. Can I come over for some tea? So your friend comes over, you're sitting on the couch, and they're sharing whatever's on their heart and whatever their pain is. And maybe they start to tear up and cry, or maybe they even get angry. And rather than you saying, okay, this is making me uncomfortable, I need you to leave, which would be detrimental to the friendship, you just let them be in their emotions, and you let them be with their feelings, and you hold a loving container to witness them. You're not asking them to change. You're not asking them to go away. You're just saying, I am here holding you exactly as you are in this moment. Same thing with the body. So when something comes up within the body, rather than saying you need to leave, this is too uncomfortable, or I need you to be something different, or try to fix it, listen like a loving friend, and things will alchemize. They will shift naturally. This brings me to my next reflection. I never let myself feel beyond my capacity to hold my emotion. So, for example, there were some times where a song would come on that reminded me of her, and I would start to cry, being with and listening to my emotion of grief. As I tracked my nervous system, meaning listening to my heart beating, feeling the rate of my breath, sensing into my muscle tone, there was a time or two when I would notice that anxiety would start to take over, and the emotion was too strong and had the potential to push me in a state of panic. So in these moments, I would consciously make a decision to change my environment. I'd turn off the song, I'd play different music, I might turn on a mindless YouTube video or something to shift my attention, redirect my attention. I would consciously try to distract myself from the feelings that had started to become too overwhelming to the point where they might push me into a state of panic. I think it can be easy to simply say, let yourself cry. True. And I know I said it. And there is such a thing as emotions and situations being beyond our ability to cope in a healthy way. And thus they push ourselves over the edge and into a state of overwhelm. And this is where the emotion can't process because we are in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, and our system is frozen up. And thus the emotion stays trapped. This is where getting support, professional support, or from your community can be really, really helpful. So therapy, friends, loved ones, really letting someone be there who has a lot of resource in their system and who is knowledgeable enough to guide you back to your resource when you are losing track of it. And if you don't have access to support in the moments when you're reaching that tipping point into overwhelm, maybe you need to distract yourself and tend to your emotions at a time when you do have support. So put that support in place for yourself. If the emotions aren't tended to, they can become suppressed in the body and show up as nervous system dysregulation in our daily lives. So things like anxiety, depression, little things can result in really, really big triggers if we don't kind of tend to these triggers as they arise with a good amount of support around us. So far, number 1, let yourself cry. But number 2, notice if the grief is becoming too overwhelming and beyond your capacity to hold in a balanced way. Then put support in place to help you process through these emotions. The next thing that I did was really allow myself to do the bare minimum in my life. Way less doing than normal. Truth be told, I've had very little energy reserves throughout all of this. And rather than pushing myself to show up in my work and my friendships, I truly just let myself be really, really slow. I obviously haven't posted on YouTube in months. And I recently launched the Science and Magic podcast, and it was getting quite a bit of traction. I actually had a couple of episodes already recorded and ready to post. But after the breakup happened, I took a complete break from that and I went silent. I didn't send emails to my email list or text messages to my text list. And I was really behind in updating my Science and Magic membership platform. In fact, I decided to send a message to all my members, letting them know what I was going through and thanking them for their patience and with my pace and just letting me be human. The main point here is that I didn't put any effort into growing my business at all, and I didn't have a lot of anxiety about not doing that. I think I worked through a lot of those beliefs that we have to be doing to be productive. Maybe at moments there was low levels of like pressure, like I should put some energy into the podcast, or I haven't put a YouTube video up in a while. But I knew that I have to hold myself accountable, or I get to hold myself accountable to embodying this content. And that's how I feel in integrity with what I share with all of you. The one thing that I did make sure of was that I was energized enough to show up in my raw humanness for my existing clients with presence. And that was the main thing I focused on, is showing up to what was already there and doing the best I could and letting myself be a bit imperfect in that. And yet the interesting thing about all of this is that my business continued to grow. Every day my YouTube channel would get just a little bit more subscribers. More people would sign up for my text list. I have meditations that are uploaded on the meditation app Insight Timer. And during this time period, my followers nearly doubled. I also signed 2 new private coaching clients during this time period, without doing any marketing, any launching, any strategic sharing of my work. There was something about me honoring my energy levels and surrendering any sort of willpower I had that made me incredibly magnetic during this time. And it's funny because I didn't feel magnetic. I actually got pretty sick during the month of January with a few different conditions. I felt weak, I didn't feel resourced, and I definitely didn't feel in an attractive energy. But I let myself feel that way. I let myself just be. And being me, exactly as I was, even in a quote-unquote state of negative emotions, this created a magnetism of authenticity. And like I said before, I don't feel like I could share the messages that I do share in integrity if I were to have pushed through in a time periods like this. I hope that by sharing my story and how I related to this time period of grief and loss and heartache, it might offer a permission slip for those of you out there who might be going through challenging periods to honor your own energy levels, that it's okay to be slow, that life will flow regardless in a divine order, in an order that is just right for you and your circumstance. And you'll most likely be even more magnetic because of that. I'm a testament to that right now. My business has never been more full in my entire career than it is right now, after 3 months of grief and slowness. Not that you need grief to be successful, but what I'm saying is that I just let myself be as I was without trying to push through or force anything, in a state of surrender. And my business has been flowing through me with very little effort. It came from a space of non-doing, of living in integrity with my body and the messages that I put forth in this world and share with all of you. On the flip side, some people process grief by staying really busy. I think that's okay too. There's no right or wrong way to go through our emotions. The point is to listen to what your body truly needs in any given moment and giving yourself permission to do that thing. When I was in my mid-20s, I went through the incredible grief of losing my dad to alcoholism. That's probably a whole other video, but I handled that grief in a very different way. When I found out that he passed, my employer at the time tried to send me home, and I refused. I worked the entire day, and I kept my existing schedule that evening. I cried a little for sure, but I also felt kind of numb. It was like my body was frozen up to protect me from the pain. And staying busy at the time felt like a way to cope, a way for my nervous system to lean into structure and a degree of normalcy, and to not push me into a state of overwhelm. So in that case, I remember that the grief was fully ready to show itself almost a year later. And that's when I broke down. And I continue to revisit that grief of losing my father in waves and in cycles, but I always let myself feel it when it arrives. And always is a strong word, but I am pretty good about it. And giving myself permission to slow down and do nothing when it feels right to do so helps me to be with the grief. I think the issue comes when we stuff our grief because we feel that our work won't be done if we take time off. The truth is, if we tend to our grief, we will return to our work with more energy and more authenticity than if we stuff it away in hiding. There's always a resonance of it behind the surface. The next thing I did was give myself permission to have fun. Wasn't a fun few months, but you all know that I love going out dancing. So amidst my grief, I have been dancing up a storm throughout all of this. I've been giving myself permission to get dressed up, to look cute, and to dance the night away. I've been going to dance classes, going out social dancing. I've been giving myself permission to laugh, to play, to have these brief moments of lightness. And these moments of lightness take nothing away from the grieving process. I believe that we are a full spectrum, multidimensional human beings that can hold many different emotions at the same time. The moments of play felt like an oasis for me in this, this desert of grief that I was in and have been in. They were truly this precious gift in the process of my recovery. So if grief or loss or heartache has come knocking on your door, maybe ask yourself, what makes me feel light? How do I have fun? And then give yourself a little push, because it takes a little push when we're feeling down, to get yourself to those environments or with those people that help you feel like you're having fun. I promise you, you can hold both. One does not take away from the other. The last thing that I learned was such a huge lesson over the past few months. It regards the essence of receptivity. Receiving, receiving, receiving. I mentioned it at the beginning of this video that I had no energy to figure out what I was going to eat or even where I was going to live or sleep that night. My breakup was really fast, so my ex and I decided that it was best that we didn't share living accommodations. And this meant that I was staying at a friend's home in the middle of Minnesota winter, in the darkest time of the year, December, over the holiday season. I could not even emotionally deal with sifting housing options and finding a new apartment. It was too much for me. I was focused on eating, drinking water, where I was going to sleep. And my community showed up for me in massive ways. I had countless people reach out to me and offer a spare bedroom or a couch. Friends cooked meals for me and nourishing snacks so that I could nibble on them throughout the day and kind of stabilize my weight loss. I remember one friend cooked me these delicious sage ghee-soaked cashews. Oh, it was so sweet. It felt like such a gesture of kindness. And when I stayed with my friends, I barely had any energy to be a proper guest. I was kind of a blob on the couch, but I felt so welcome to just be exactly how I was. Another funny thing is, some of you might know this, but I'm really particular about the water I drink. I don't like tap water. And I'm also not really into distilled or reverse osmosis water because they're stripped of minerals. So I basically drink filtered water with some minerals added, and it's kind of this whole process to create my water. And it takes a lot of time and energy, but I love doing that. That's kind of one of my things. So since I was staying at friends' places for weeks, I stopped drinking my normal amounts of water because I didn't have the kind that I normally like to drink. So in addition to losing weight, I was dehydrated. And one of my friends was so thoughtful that she even made this gallon of water for me with the minerals in it and sent me on my way with it, knowing that I needed hydration. This same friend took the initiative to research places for me to live. She sent me a handful of good options in the neighborhood that I wanted to live in at the price point I was hoping for. And because of her kindness and the energy she put forth to help me lift that heavy load, that's what it felt like at the time, I found my dream place. I'm actually here right now. This is a new location. You'll see my videos here now. I just didn't have the energy or the capacity or motivation to do that. So words can't express how helpful that was for me and how she saw that need and just did it. So much energy was gifted to me during this time, and I had nothing that I could give back. Aside from loving acts of service like being cooked and cared for, friends and family really opened up a loving ear to hear more about my process of my pain and my heartache. I'm someone who usually tries to always consider an exchange of energy in my relationships. So at this point in my life, during this period of heartache, I really had to lean into only receiving help, receiving support, receiving kindness, receiving energy. I was knocked to my knees and really landed into the soft landing pad of my loved ones. And what a blessing it was to be asked to embody such vulnerability. As painful as this time was in my life, the conversations and the moments I had offered such depth and intimacy. When you open yourself up to receiving, it creates a connection between yourself and the energy that is giving to you. And there's this beautiful moment of humanness. If you are grieving, if you are in pain or you're heartbroken or you need help in your life, the inquiry might be, where can you open yourself up to receiving support? Where is help trying to reach you? In what ways are you blocking yourself from it and why? Remember that being open to receiving is a gift to that which is giving. It is a sacred energy exchange, one that creates intimacy and builds connection of the deepest kind. So let yourself receive help, receive support. See if you can open your heart up to being cared for and give yourself permission to be filled up without having to give back anything in exchange. Aside from these main tips, of course, prioritizing self-care and goodness is on the list. So once I got my feet under me and into my new place, I took many long baths. I made sure I made it to hot yoga classes and dance classes so that my body was moving. I cooked plenty of nourishing meals. I got my water routine back in, so I got hydrated again. And I created all the time and space that I needed to heal. And I'm still healing. My heart is still mending. But I feel like I now have more energy to show up for my business. I hope that this video offered value to you in some way. Maybe if you find yourself in a state of heartbreak or grief, you resonated with some of my sharing. I think that telling stories, however vulnerable they may be, can have a massive impact by way of connection. So if something resonated with you, please let me know in the comments. Please give this video a like so that the algorithms know to share it with other heartbroken individuals who could maybe benefit from this sharing. The biggest takeaway that I will leave you with is let yourself be with your emotions. You are exactly as you're supposed to be in this moment. Take the time needed, especially for high achievers who follow this channel. That's my area of expertise, is working with high achieving energy. Being with our emotions, taking time, can feel like it's taking away from our work. It is not. It is deepening our experience. It's clearing excess energy, and it's ultimately making us more present for our work when we return to it. So like I said, my expertise is in working with high performers to help them find a more intimate connection with their body. And I don't necessarily have a program for grief specifically, but my curriculum offers nervous system education and embodiment opportunities and support to help my clients be with their emotions. This may include grief. If you want to work with me, check out my website. I will link it below. And I'm also actually going to link a meditation that I recorded that is specifically intended to be with and soothe heartache. I will end with a poem that a dear friend sent me. It is by John O'Donohue, and it is called The Breakup of a Relationship. Now you endeavor to gather yourself and withdraw in slow animal woundedness from love turned sour and ungentle. When we love, the depth in us trusts itself forward until the empty space between becomes gradually woven into an embrace where longing can close its weary eyes. Love can seldom end clean, for all the tissue is torn, and each lover turned stranger is dropped into a ruin of distance where emptiness is young and fierce. Time becomes strange and slipshod. It mixes memories that felt the kiss of the eternal with the blistering hurt of now. Unknown to themselves, certain small things touch nerve lines to the heart and bring back with color and force all that is utterly lost. This is the time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try as best you can not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart all sense of yourself and your hesitant light. If you remain generous, time will come good, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of promise, where the air will be kind and blushed with beginning. So wherever you find yourself, I'm sending you love. You're doing great. And I'll see you in the next video.